It's Tuesday morning. Somebody just walked through the back door. They're coming back from an overdose, from a return to use, from a hospitalization, from disappearing for a while. Not for the first time, mind you, not the best case scenario. They're back right after the thing everyone in that room had been bracing themselves for. And there's a split second. Every worker in that room, every practitioner, provider, every physician, every nurse, every receptionist, every harm reduction worker, every peer has to make a choice. This is sacred nonsense. I'm Olive. There's a 3-pound glass apple sitting on a desk somewhere, and it's got one job. It just makes sure the page is still there when somebody comes back for it. What kind of participation actually changes a life? Seeing is the easy part. Staying is the practice part. When I was younger, I believed that if people could just see clearly, everything else would fall into place, natural order, if you will. If someone finally understood this thing we call addiction, substance use disorder, surely compassion would come next. If someone really understood grief, surely they'd stop trying to fix it for people. If someone finally saw humanity in the person who had been so difficult in their field of awareness, how could they possibly look away? And then I started working in this field, if you will, which unfortunately has a habit of ruining perfectly tidy theories as well as clear vision. Because in these new fields of dark, I watched people see clearly and still leave. I watched institutions commission beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, perfect reports about problems they had no intention of remaining in relationship with. Devastating for an idealist, by the way. I watched movements become fluent in justice while quietly exhausting the people that carry it, including our own harm reduction practitioners. And I watched myself understand exactly what needed to happen in a moment, like out-of-body experience, and then discover that understanding it really did nothing. Seeing matters. Seeing people clearly is an act of love. It's not enough. Not even close. We've been taught to imagine transformation as a lightning strike moment, one moment, one realization, one breakthrough, one sentence, one one-liner that changes your mind, maybe forever. Maybe you've had moments like that. I know I have. They're beautiful. They're real. They're just not what usually changes a life. Lives change the way rivers shape stone. Adrienne Marie Brown does this beautifully in Emergent Strategy with what I'd call a prayer. Make me more like water, which means slowly, repeatedly, disciplined, almost offensively, uncinematic, which is terrible news if you're trying to make an inspirational montage, but excellent news if you've ever wondered whether small acts of presence actually matter or make a difference, because they do. They really do. I think they might matter more than we know. And even when we know, I think they still matter more than that. It's always some glass apple or a super polished mineral, dare I say, a rock. A brass eagle, maybe. So many eagles, so many brass eagles. Why do they weigh 3 pounds? It's the sort of object that survives your move and the next move and the next move because nobody knows whose it is. It just keeps ending up in your office box. Please tell me I'm not the only one. It feels like a relic from an old world. A paperweight has one job. It doesn't write the paper. If the wind is strong enough, eventually everything moves, but a paperweight knows this. Its only job is to help the page stay long enough for the work to happen, which is such an ordinary, mundane job, and I can't stop thinking about it. Stay long enough for the work to happen. Just long enough. You're not fighting gravity. Your only job is to work with gravity. Naloxone's like that, by the way. You might know it as Narcan. It doesn't fix anything. It keeps the page from leaving before the next sentence arrives. A lot of the things we think are supposed to heal or eliminate suffering were never meant to do that. They're meant to interrupt it, to intervene. I spend a lot of time in rooms with people who have been told they're too much, too complicated, too expensive, too unpredictable, too chaotic, too many diagnoses when they're only equipped to deal with one, maybe. Too many disappointments, too many so-called relapses, just like too many, too much. And sometimes nobody says any of those words out loud. They don't have to. Systems become fluent in implication. The moment a person's life becomes difficult, the room changes, the atmosphere changes. The conversation starts drifting toward management, control, who's responsible, what's the protocol, has this been documented, what are the next steps? Paper exists for a reason, systems exist for a reason. It's a question about sequence, because sometimes the paperwork gets ordered before the welcome, the hi, hello, how are you? The documentation arrives before the relationship. The questionnaire arrives before offering to sit, before the chair. And I keep wondering what happens to a person when the first thing they meet is not another human being, but a process, a policy, a procedure, protocol. Somebody who's been through something horrible, something life-altering, who's been in the care of systems and received care from none, who took care into their own hands and has now come to the end of what they can do, or what a substance can do, or what a mutual aid network can do, what a net of people catching the fallout between our so-called continuum of care. And the first thing that meets them is a clipboard and a blue Bic ballpoint pen. Shameful. The pen, of course, and the rest. Paper is evidence. It's not relationship. It's definitely not hospitality. Sometimes it's life-saving. Sometimes it's the thing that gets housing approved or medication covered or gets your kid back into school or maybe out of one. And none of that is trivial, but paperwork cannot do what people do. It cannot stay. It needs glass apples and brass eagles to hold it down. And I think that's why paperweights are moving me right now. And what if that's what love looks like? Just substantial, like 3-pound brass eagle, dependable, like too heavy for explanation, glass apple, substantial, heavy enough that another person's life doesn't blow away. And if you're still breathing, you're the lucky one. So Tuesday morning, the back door, or the split second, every person in that room has to choose between staying and managing. Staying looks like, you're here. I'm glad you're here. Whatever happened, you came back. Let's keep it that way. Managing looks like the wellness check, the risk assessment, policy and procedure, documentation and chart notes, and that institutional pivot, the shoop on the heel, the sanitized paperwork move that happens when a feeling gets too big. Managing isn't bad. I've been the one managing. I've been the one being managed. Neither one of those versions of me is a villain. Managing is what we do, though, when we haven't been given the conditions or the practice or the capacity to stay. It's what happens when your grant requires outcomes, when the outcomes require progress, when progress requires a narrative, implications, assumptions that doesn't include the part where somebody disappears for 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years. None of it prepares you for the 3 minutes somebody isn't breathing and you're breathing for them, waiting for the naloxone to do its thing. And then they're gone for however long and then they walk back in like a weather event. Staying is the thing that actually changes something. And it doesn't even look like participation, but it is. It's evidence that this person is worth staying for. It's evidence to them that they're worth staying for. And some of us have been waiting our whole lives for that evidence. No amount of information was ever going to provide it. It had to be demonstrated. acted out, played by a body in a room over time. That's participation, showing up with your whole self into the reality of another person, not leaving because it gets complicated, not managing that complication into a clean, tidy outcome for a spreadsheet, staying in contact with what's actually happening. Paper can't do that. It can document some of what happened, but so much of what actually changes a life in that happening, I'm not sure it can be documented at all. It's, staying requires a person, an actual inconvenient, tired, occasionally bad at it person. You don't even have to be good at it. Let me tell you about Jessica. I mean, she must have been around my age, honestly. When I knew her, she had 4 kids and a history that started before she had any say in it. The kind that gets decided for you when you're too young to decide anything and ends up costing you for the rest of your life. One of the things it cost her was her health. She contracted HIV young. By the time I knew her, she was in specialty care, on medications held in place when the paper started blowing away. I won't walk you through every door that closed. You probably already know how it goes. How one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing. Like a flip book. You could probably make a flip book of paperwork of Jessica's conditions and see exactly how it played out when you're a human-sized sim. She was a person who was technically being served by 17 different systems and somehow not being served by any of them. She started using drugs, which, given everything that had happened to her, it makes complete and total sense to me. More sense, honestly, than not using drugs would have made. And that has held true for every single person I have ever met who had a problem with a substance or wanted to change their relationship to one. I have not met one yet, not in the most chaotic, the most seemingly illogical, the most institutionally nonsensical drug use, where I sat down and heard the whole story and it did not make sense. Every time, I can't imagine myself in any other shoes but the ones they're in. The incarceration came, medications went, her viral load rebounded. The last time I saw her, she weighed maybe 87 pounds. I used to be a hairdresser and I would come to Access Point after work. She looked at me and she told me I was so pretty. She said, "You're so pretty." And then she said, "I used to be pretty too." And I think about that sentence a lot. The past tense of it. Like the way that she was still in there, still reaching, still wanting to be seen as something other than what the system had filed her under. Riley used to take her to medical appointments. He'd drive her, sit with her, be present in the particular way that Riley is present, which is like the kind of person that doesn't need another person to be doing well to be worth showing up for. One time, a doctor was treating an abscess on her arm, and Riley was there holding her hand. He went to go pick her up at like the butt crack of dawn. He was holding her hand, and there was blood dripping. And the doctor looked at Riley and said, "Watch out, bro. She's got AIDS." Sit with that in an exam room while someone's holding her hand, while she can hear every word. Riley told me later what he watched happen to her face when she heard it. The way the dignity just left. The way the diagnosis, the label that was supposed to get her care, became the thing that stripped her in front of a witness. He didn't let go of her hand. And that's really the whole story. He didn't let go. So whatever she felt in the next 10 seconds, like shame, humiliation, the old familiar experience of just being reduced to a condition, a risk, a contagion, a thing to be warned about, she felt it with someone still holding on. In the wee hours of the day after Riley's birthday, she died of AIDS-related wasting in 2023. And she's not the only one of our people who have died from AIDS-related wasting. It's the fucking 90s. And I want to be careful here because people hear AIDS and they file it under history, something that happened past tense in somebody else's decade. It is not history here. Stage 3, at diagnosis means the diagnosis and the emergency are the same appointment. It means every system that could have caught it had years to catch it. And these are not people who were outside of care. Most of them were inside 17 different kinds of it and getting actual care by none. The paper that was supposed to hold her had long since blown away. Medications, funding, transportation to the clinic, rural access to care, the system of documentation that said her life was worth preserving, gone, if it even existed in the first place. So what stays? For Jessica, what stayed was Riley. What stayed was his presence. I know this doesn't fix what happened to her. It doesn't undo what happened to her as a child, her 87 pounds, or the doctor who said what he said while she was bleeding. Riley, the last time he saw her, he carried her out to the car. Like such a rescue picture in your mind, but staying is not rescue. Sometimes you stay and the person still dies of what was done to them before you got there. But Jessica knew that she was worth someone holding on. And I believe that mattered. I believe it mattered in ways that don't fit in any column I've ever seen. The thing about staying that nobody articulates is that it costs something. I don't mean that in a burnout brochure way. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first, as if the solution to being wrung out by a system is more efficient. You know, boundaries around your fucking lunch break. I mean it theologically. To stay with another person's reality, really stay. Not manage, not observe from a safe clinical distance. Not chart note it, document it. To let it land on you. Let it change you. To accept that you are not a neutral party to somebody else's suffering. Contact isn't the same as exposure. Being in relationship with a person means that what happens to them happens at least a little bit to you. The harm reduction worker who doesn't get off outreach until 10 at night, because that's when people are up. That's when outreach actually works. They're practicing what some people call a ministry of presence, a theology of presence that most seminaries have not caught up to yet. The peer who sits in the ER in the waiting room for 4 hours because their person's in there and nobody else is coming, that's not providing wraparound support. That's demonstrating with a body in real time that somebody is worth 4 hours of a waiting room chair. You can't put that in an outcome metric. You can't put it in a grant report. The report will say referral to medical services or accompanied client to medical appointment. That will be true, and it will also be the least true thing you have ever read or written in a report, because what actually happened is that somebody learned, maybe for the first time, that they were worth staying for. I used to think the opposite of abandonment was rescue. Swoop in, carry them to the car, fix the thing, like pluck the person out of their conditions, install them in a better situation, sign the papers, close the file, measure the outcome, do it again tenfold. And rescue has its place. Sometimes the house is on fire and somebody has to carry you out. But rescue is a single event, a one-off. Lives change the way rivers shape stone. So a life that changes requires someone to stay, to be dependable. Not forever, not without limits, not at the cost of your own survival. Hear me say that, because you're worth it too. I'm not asking anyone to martyr themselves. Martyrdom is just another way of saying unsustainable, and this field has enough of that already, to be honest. But longer than is comfortable. Past the point where the paperwork would say the episode is concluded. Into the part where things get complicated, unclear, real, and there is no continuum on the continuum of care. That's where the actual work lives. And staying in the actual work is different from believing in the work from a safe distance, which is something our field, including me, confuses, probably more often than we'd like to admit. There was a season in my life when I honestly believed the greatest gift I could offer someone else, another person, was clarity. If I could just find the right words, right metaphor, right reframe to make it clear, it would all click into place. I don't think I was naive. I think I was hopeful. And I still want to be hopeful. But hope has had to become so much more spacious because I've watched people look directly at reality, at someone like Jessica and the conditions surrounding, and choose something else. I've watched institutions do it. I've watched movements do it. I've watched people I love do it. I've watched myself do it. What I hope I carry instead is a better question. Instead of asking, how do I help people see? I'm asking, what helps us stay in relationship with what we've already seen? I don't have an answer for that. But here's what I've found so far. Looking at patterns and lineage and history and records, the people who change things are not the people with the best information. They're the people who stay the longest in contact with reality, the ones who don't manage the discomfort into a comfortable distance, the people who let hard things be hard without immediately reaching for a framework to explain it or to manage it. People who stay. I'm lucky to have a lineage of many who stayed in this work. What kind of participation changes a life? The staying kind. The kind that shows up before there's evidence it'll work, keeps showing up after the evidence is inconclusive, the kind that doesn't require conversion, testimonies, before and afters, transformations, the kind that doesn't charge confession or testimony as the price of continued presence, the kind that holds things in place, not forever, not without discernment, but long enough for the person in the room to notice that somebody is still here. That moment, registering that you have not been left, is not an outcome that fits in a column I've ever seen. It doesn't show up in a 6-month follow-up, and I believe sincerely that it is the primary mechanism by which human beings actually change. Not insight, not information, not the perfect intervention delivered at the perfect moment, but the experience of being stayed with. And paperweights, those ridiculous, somehow so heavy for their size objects, are made to stay. They're made to keep other things staying. They don't demand that paper perform. They just say, I got you. Don't go anywhere. They don't get credit for the work that happens all around them. They just sit. Solid, fucking reliable. Holding down something paper thin so the writing doesn't blow away. And that's what we're here to practice. A Paperheart. The Paperheart Bureau publishes observations. Here's an observation. Every transformation I've ever witnessed, the real ones, the kind that reorder a person's whole life, every single one of them had a person who stayed past the point where staying made sense. Past intake assessment, past return to use, what some people call relapse, past the point where the case would reasonably have been closed, past the point where most people would leave. Not in the clarity they offered, not in the resources they connected, not in an evidence-based intervention, which I say loosely because I'm not sure we even know what an evidence-based intervention is down here in the South. In the staying itself, something becomes possible that isn't possible otherwise. So, August, Overdose Awareness Month. We're the people who get charged with a lot of things that month. People turn to us. They think that's our only expertise. And I'm like, our expertise is conditions, ma'am. Conditions of suffering, conditions of recovery, conditions of thriving, conditions of wellness, conditions of mediocrity. We're observers and participants, and we stay with conditions of all kinds. So let me say the part you might not expect from me. I don't think awareness is a reliable instrument. Awareness points at a thing. It has never once stayed with one. Jessica didn't die of an overdose. She died of everything that got decided about her before she ever had a... Next time we widen out, we're going to look at the edges of the frame. Okay, the edges of this ribbon, the whole apparatus that manufactures these deaths and then hands us a ribbon to be sad with in the month of August. Bring both hands, please. We're still here, still in contact, still holding the page down in Category 5 hurricane winds, my God. So come back. I hope you will. I'll still be here. Just one more thing before I go, and I really mean this. If you are a person who's ever been stayed with, I hope you know that wasn't a service delivery. A person wasn't performing a service for an outcome. That person was doing what I would call love in real time. Harm reduction is love, and you deserved that. And you still do. And you deserve to know that. See you soon.